Reads Book Club!
Bad books, bad books. I've got so many bad books to read.
Welcome to the Bad Reads Book Club. I'm Nurse Huckleberry, and today we're going to be talking about the Purr-fect crime. Which I hate the cover. I hate it.
It's kind of scary.
It spooks me out. It's like a cat, but with a man's face. All spooked out. Don't like it. When I picked this book, I did not realize that it's actually an anthology of 15 different stories, all by different authors. Some of them have multiple authors even. Very quickly, so this was chosen by chat. I did pick it up at Goodwill. $2. $2.
Inflation.
It says murder creeps in on a little cat feet as 15 illustrious storytellers celebrate the feline. In the back it says tails lashing, eyes gleaming, paws dipped in blood. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. To the Egyptians they were divine. To the practitioners of witchcraft they were messengers of Satan. To the lonely they are warm, soft companions. Children adore them. Poets rhapsodize about them. We'll wait and see what our finest mystery writers do with black cats, yellow cats, cypern cats, cats of the mafia, cats in packs, cats invisible, cats deadly. Put a saucer of milk beside your favorite chair and pick up this book and prepare to be entertained to the last murderous meow. This book was really weird. Not all the stories were murders, which I did think they were gonna all be murders. They weren't. Also, there was a wide variety of genres. Like they're all mysteries, but there was like a Western style. There was a couple of sci-fi ones. There's some that are very like Sherlock Holmesy, but also one of them was about a thief, and they all interpret cats in a different way, where I was like, okay, are these cats gonna be like involved in the murder? Like the first one, it's like a guy who's like talking about shooting a cat, but he didn't actually shoot the cat. He shot a man who got in the way. Then there's like a robot cat. And one of them doesn't even have a cat, and it was called the Invisible Cat, but literally a cat does not make an appearance. They don't even say the word cat in the story. I was like, this is just a mystery. I don't know, maybe I didn't read it carefully enough. Maybe maybe some pages got stuck together, but I did not see a cat in that story. It got to the end of it, and I was like, where was the fucking cat? And it was called, and I looked back at the title, and it's called The Invisible Cat, and I was like, okay, sure. Obviously, seeing as there's 15 stories in here, I'm not going to talk about all of them because that would be too much. So I'm going to talk about a couple, what I would say like the best and like the worst. So I would say by far the worst, most boring one was the very first story. And I don't understand why you would do that. Why would you put the worst one as the very first story? It was called Black Cat in the Snow. And it's like a Western style where the sheriff is like, oh, and the character that dies, everyone doesn't like everyone is better off that they're dead. So they kind of like half-heartedly investigate their murder anyways. Then nobody really cares. They're like, yeah, that guy, objectively, piece of shit. He like beat his grandchildren and I think his son is the one who kills him, but he like beats his grandchildren and he's just mean to everyone and everybody's like, you suck, and they all hate him, and he gets murdered and everyone's kind of like, oh yeah, that's too bad. Aww. And they figure out who did it, and then the sheriff was literally like, yeah, you know, he's got reason enough. I'm not even gonna worry about it. Like, they don't even do anything. Like, they figure out who did it, and he doesn't even do anything. And it's like, whatever. And it wasn't even, like, a good way of, like, the person dying. Like, the whole thing was dumb. Yeah, so that was definitely the most boring, and I do not understand why they put it in the first. Also, that was not a fine mystery. Anyone could have figured it out, like, pretty fucking easily. Everyone hated him. And literally, he got shot. Like, the person who shot him was like, yeah, I shot him, but it was an accident. And they figured out that it wasn't an accident because he was like, yeah, I was gonna shoot at this cat that was in the snow. And they're like, but he loves animals, so he would never shoot at a cat in the snow. Like, come on. But then nothing happens. Everybody moves on. I would say like the best, like, have to figure out like the who done it, like how did they do it mystery was this one about a lady who's like, also this book was written in the 80s. They used the word invalid a lot, which I was like, oh. There's a woman who's elderly and paralyzed, and she has like a sister who's also elderly that lives with her and takes care of her and stuff. And the paralyzed one is like, oh, I have a lot of money that I inherited from my grandpapa, and you don't get any. And she like kept the money like in the house somewhere because she was afraid of banks. I don't know. They're all trying to figure out like how she died because she kept. There was a store where you could just buy cats. I don't know when exactly this was set. Like, I don't know how many people are willing to just let someone come in and just buy cats over and over again. She would be like, yeah, I need a black cat with green eyes that's about this big. And be like, and then every week she ordered a new one. She would ask for a new cat. But they were like, she notoriously hates cats. So I don't understand why she keeps ordering cats. And it was really mean. Someone's trying to poison the old lady so that she dies, right? And the old lady's like, I don't want to be poisoned. And she's picking up on somebody's trying to kill her. So what does she do? She feeds the poisoned food to cats. To see if she's feeding food to cats to see if it's poison. And that's why she keeps needing new cats. And her sister that lives with her has a cat, so she just keeps getting cats that look like the first cat and then killing them after a week with the poison that's supposed to be poisoning her. And so, yeah, and then tricking someone else to carry the cat bodies to the incinerator. And then they keep finding little cat skeletons. And they're like, they sent a note to the tenants and they're like, hey, could you guys stop putting your dead cats in the incinerator, please? Like, come on. It's so messed up. And then they eventually figured out that she was killed because the person, like, because she'd been testing out on the cats, right? And then they were like, oh, when they're looking around, they find a cat bludgeoned to death in the bathroom. Just a whole cat there. And I was like, this poor cat. Like, what the fuck? And they're like, oh yeah, clearly it wasn't the sister because she loved cats. And the paralyzed woman couldn't have done it, so it was the murderer who did it. So the sister wasn't the murderer. And then eventually they figured out that, they were like, well, if she was using the cats to test the food and she was poisoned by them, there was no poison in the food, they looked. They're like, well, where's the poison? The killer put it on the fork. Because who feeds a cat with a fork? No one, right? So he puts it on the fork and she eats the... And it turned out it was the neighbor who had been helping redecorate her house and also worked at a chemical company. And he was poisoning her. So. But that was the best one. Except I didn't like all the killing of cats. That part, I didn't like it. And then there's two sci-fi ones that really stood out. One of them was just ridiculous. Very clearly written by a man in a really, really obvious way. That was called Murder is a Gas. And it was about...
What?
Murder is a Gas. So it's a sheriff that goes out to this like crazy, super high-tech laboratory where 3 scientists had recently died, all seemingly of natural causes. Right? And so they're like, oh no, like what has happened? How did all 3 of these people die within a month here because of natural causes? And so he has to try and figure out like how they died and why they died and blah, blah, blah. Like one of them, well, actually it's not natural causes. He exploded. One of them got blown up. One of them, his heart literally like ripped open inside his chest with no damage outside. And then the third one got stung by bees and died, or he was allergic to bees. And so there's like, and it's all like weird inventions, and they're like, oh yeah, we kind of just let the scientists do whatever they want and invent whatever. So there's one guy who's got these giant stilts, and they're like 40-foot stilts that he's walking around on outside, and like but the stilts aren't like good yet, so every now and again he'll just fall over. And so he has a Jeep with like a big net in front that drives around next to him trying to catch him if he falls. They're like this is so, and I was like, okay, great. There's this giant cat robot that it's basically like the cat bus from Ghibli Studios, if you know it, where it has like a whole bunch of legs, but all the legs have different like appendages on the end and they can do different things. And the cat's like, it can talk and it's like sassy. It's all artificial intelligence and it's controlled from like a tower. The cat is like cruising around all the time. I don't know. The cat's weird. It like chases things. There's like a dog that the giant, and it's huge. This huge giant cat robot doesn't like. There's also super magnets and stuff. The whole thing is really dumb. Anyways, it turns out that they were working on this big special project, right? Big special project. And it was super top secret and it was gonna make them a lot of money, and all the scientists were planning on retiring with that money and just doing research. And that's why they got killed, because the guy who owned the lab was like, no, loyalty is key. If you wanna come here and do stuff, then you gotta stay. So he killed them all with the cat robot. But there's a scene at the end where the guy, the like sheriff, also there's a hot secretary that he just keeps trying to like take on dates. And she's like, nice. Yeah, and this is how I knew it was written by a man. She's like, oh, but how did you ever figure that out? And he goes, well, honey, it was my masculine intuition that led me to the cause. Ew. Masculine intuition? Ugh, so gross. So that was super fun. Anyways, at the end, he figures out that it was the giant cat robot. And then he's like, oh, we gotta take down the cat robot. And the cat robot's like trying to kill them, right? Of course it is. So he's like trying to kill the tower that controls the robot. And so he runs out and he's like going to the guy on the stilts. And he's like, give me your stilts. I need to get up to the tower. And the guy's like, okay, but you gotta take your pants and shoes off. Because the stilts react to your legs, and so it's gotta, and so he's like, yeah, okay, and so he's like taking his pants off, and then he's like, puts the stilts on, and he's like, great, and he's running around on these stilts in, nope, just his boxers, cruising through, just like, you know, on the stilts, and he goes over and he's like, starts shooting at the tower. And I can only describe it as like if somebody was saying like, oh, it looked like in Star Trek where there's a big huge computer with a bunch of lights and it goes beep boop beep boop. And he's like, and it says that he shot like a particularly aggressive looking light. I don't know. And then it kills, and then secretary shows up in his car and just smashes through the cat anyways. So and that was it. Also, he finally finds out what project they were working on, and it was toothpaste. It was a fancy toothpaste that could prevent cavities with one usage forever. There's no more cavities with this fancy toothpaste, and it was going to revolutionize the market on toothpaste. And that was the invention. And then the last one I'm going to talk about, a little intelligence. So I don't know what year this is set in, but it's sometime in the future where Earth has been at war with Cyprus 9, a different planet, for like 30 years at this point. And so when they landed there, Cyprus 9 was like 200 years behind Earth technology-wise. And so they've been at a disadvantage. But this is 42 light years away from Earth. And they're trying to figure out how to end the war, right? And so like the Earth is having a hard time because they're obviously 42 light years is a long time to try and move supplies. And then the indigenous peoples of that planet, they've got home side advantage, but they are way under-prepped compared to the fancy guns and blasters brought by Earth. So they send a couple of negotiators to try and, you know, come to peace negotiators. And they send these 4 aliens to come over. And apparently it's a matriarchal race. And so like they're like these big, big old juicy ladies. And they have different color skin. They don't look human. They're humanoid, and they have, where they're like, upright, and they have intelligence, and they could speak English pretty good. 2 of them are blue, and 1 of them's green, and 1 of them's yellow. And actually, it's kind of interesting because they're like, oh yeah, the blue is the pigment in their skin, and they have yellow blood. So if you have some blue pigment, then you're green, and if you have more blue pigment, then you look blue. And apparently the blue ones are like the wealthy race, and the yellow ones are not good relatives. So there's like amongst the aliens, they have their own like racial wars going on and like racial problems happening. So that's interesting. So if you were the Earth government, because now Earth is just one unit, the Earth government, where would you send these aliens to be kept before you do your negotiations? A nunnery? Yeah, they send them to live with nuns. So there's nuns taking care of these aliens, and they've got like their special alien food that smells real bad, and they don't really know about Earth stuff, so they're like, okay, cool, like, so these nuns are trying really hard not to like step on their toes, and they're trying not to offend them in any way, and the like head nun for that particular church, she's like, trying to make sure that they're like, okay, like, is everything good for you? Great. And she has a cat, Felicity, right? And she's carrying the cat around, and they're like, oh my God, what is that? And she's like, oh, this is a cat. This is my cat, Felicity. And one of them is like, I don't know what that means. And the other one goes, oh yeah, humans like to keep these dumb animals around and treat them as pets. We don't do that. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. But then there's 4 of them, and they're in different rooms. And so she goes to another one, and she like knocks on the door. Is like, I just want to make sure everything's okay. And she's like, yeah, everything's fine. And then she goes, what the hell is that? And she's like, this is my cat, Felicity. And the cat goes, meow. And she's like, what did it say? And the cat goes, meow. And she's like, Felicity says, I hope you enjoy your time here, blah, blah, blah. Like, have a good night, and then just keeps walking, right? And so then she knocks on the last door, and that one answers, and she's like, oh God, why do you have a cat? And she's like, this is a nice cat, like, why are you upset? And she's like, well, one time I got taken as prisoner on an Earth ship, and they had a cat, and the cat scratched me, and I got super infected, and then I couldn't use any of the Earth medicine, because obviously that doesn't work on me. And yeah, so I'm not into cats. And she was like, I'm so sorry. Don't worry. She's a nice cat. She won't scratch you. Anyways, later, one of the aliens gets killed, right? But then they also find that the cat was killed. Okay? And they're like, So the alien got killed with a knife, and the cat wasn't killed with a knife. The cat had its freaking head blasted off with a blaster gun.
What?
Yeah, with it got its head blasted off with a blaster gun. And then there was like scorched remains, and they were like talking about, oh yes, you can see how the burns on its neck are real hard, just like a blaster. Very clearly the work of a blaster here because of the crunchy skin. So they find the cat like thrown in a garden, and they're like, oh shit, oops. And the nun's like, my cat. All right. And the nun, she's so sad. She's really sad. And she felt bad about the one alien dying because she was like, they came here to be safe, and we're supposed to keep them safe, and then they die anyways. And there was a lot of like questions about like, was it, because obviously this war's been going on, and there are some people who have family involved in the war and are really upset with the aliens. So they're like, okay, was it like, we've got all these police patrolling around the area to try and make sure the aliens are safe. Like, was it somebody on our side? Or did one of the other aliens have like an issue with that alien, and then they like did it here to try and like pass it off as like a political thing, and then they'd be fine, and they wouldn't get caught. It was one of the aliens. And how they figured it out was at the end, they figured out that the cat, they were like, oh, she could have killed it with a knife, but the cat would have been too fast, and the cat was like across the hall from when she did the stabbing, and it was the alien that had never seen a cat before. And so she thought that the cat could talk, right? So she's like, fuck, a witness. Shoot the cat. So she shoots the cat, and like the nun has this all figured out. The nun has it all figured out. And so she like had told like whatever inspector was doing the detective was doing the investigation. And so the investigator asked this particular alien, yeah, so what would you say if there was another cat at the end of the hall and he saw what you did? And she was like, I would say that that cat is a liar. And they were like, ha! Only someone who didn't know that cats can't talk would think that that cat was gonna rat you out. That's why you killed the cat. We know that you were the one who did it because you killed the cat. And she was like, fuck. That was the end of the story. And then they were like, hey nun, you're really good at this. You shouldn't be in a convent. She was like, I don't remember what her name was, but she was like, I chose this name specifically when I joined the convent, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if it was like a mystery related name or not, but I don't know. It wasn't really that. Those were my favorites, I guess. There were some other ones that were like okay. I just felt that those are the most notable of the goods and the bads. Out of 10 or out of 5, I would give it like a 3, maybe. I don't know. 5? Out of 5.
Okay.
I like a 2.5. Can I give it 2.5? I don't think I would give it. Yeah, I would not want. There's like maybe a third of the stories are enjoyable to read, and they're not even like good. They're just like interesting enough. I would say that there's one that's actually like kind of good. So spice, no spice, except for the creepy guy with the robot cat.
Yeah.
Him trying to hit on like over and over. It was very aggressive. No, it was not spicy. It was just very annoying. 0 spice. Spice would have improved it. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks, guys. Okay, bye. So let's go to the book club room. Book club!
All right. That's the wrong room. Go in the other room.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Okay, come through. Okay, there you are. All right. All right, perfect.